Morning.
Good morning.
And sir, for the record, could you please state your full name and spell your last name?
Brian Lyle Forbes, Forbes.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Forbes.
Good morning.
Could you tell us what your occupation is?
I'm a lawyer.
And where do you work?
I work at Gray, Carey, Ames & Fry here in San Diego.
That's a law firm here in San Diego?
It is.
And where are you presently living?
I live in La Jolla.
On any particular street?
It's at the corner of Calle del Oro and Calle del Cielo.
Do you know the defendant in this case, Elisabeth Broderick?
Yes, I do.
Do you live near Elisabeth Broderick?
Now?
I'm sorry, did you, back in 1989, live near Elisabeth Broderick?
Yeah, she was at the end of our street, about 4 doors up the street.
And before she moved into that house, did you know the defendant?
Yes, I'd known her for about 15 years.
Did you also know Dan Broderick?
Yes.
Could you just describe for the jury briefly how it was that you knew Dan and Elisabeth Broderick?
When I was a second-year law student up in San Francisco, during the season when they bring law students to law firms to interview, I flew to San Diego with my wife, Gail, and Dan and Betty took us out to dinner. He was working with Gray, Carey, Ames & Fry at that time, so we met them while I was training.
And then you were ultimately hired by that firm?
Yes.
Did you continue an acquaintanceship or friendship with Dan and Elisabeth Broderick?
Yes, we were close friends.
At one point, you were aware of the fact that Dan and Elisabeth Broderick separated?
Yes.
And after they separated, did Elisabeth Broderick move into the house there on Calle de Cielo?
Sometime after that, when they separated, they were living on a street called Avenida de las Ondas, which is about a block away, around the corner from where we lived at that time. They were living in a rental house while their coral reef house was being repaired. And while they were in the rental house, Dan moved out. And so she lived there for a while and then moved into the house up the street after we moved up there.
And did she continue to live in that house on Calle de Cielo up until November of 1989, as far as you knew?
Yes, she did. But she also had a condominium in addition to that at that time, I think.
I want to direct your attention to November the 5th, the morning of November the 5th, 1989. Do you remember that morning?
Yes, I do.
Were you at home that morning?
Yes.
And sometime that morning, did a man named Brad Wright come to your house?
Yes.
Do you recall approximately what time it was?
It was shortly after 7 o'clock in the morning.
What were you doing at the time?
I was in my kitchen having a cup of coffee and reading the newspaper.
This was a Sunday morning?
Yes.
And who was Brad Wright, as far as you knew?
He was Betty's boyfriend.
What happened when he came to your house?
I was sitting at the kitchen table when my wife, Gail, who obviously just woken up, came to the kitchen door and said that Brad is here. And I said, oh, and I got up and walked out to the living room where he was. And I said, hello, sit down. And he didn't sit down. I said, what's wrong? He said,
Your Honor, objection here, sir.
Your Honor,
It's foundational, go ahead.
he told me that he thought that Betty had shot Dan and Linda. And I said, why do you think that? And he told me that a friend of Betty's had called him on the telephone and told him that Betty had told that to her. He said that the woman who called him was named Diane Black. And I said, I asked him if he called the police yet. And he said no, he didn't want to call from the house where the kids were. He had spent the night at the street in her house with her.
when he was telling you this, what can you describe his emotional state?
He was clearly upset.
So it looked as though this was something he was obviously taking seriously.
Oh, yes.
What happened then?
I asked if he called the police. He said no, so I suggested that Gail immediately go and call 911 and get the police and get an ambulance over there just in case. And Brad and I continued to talk for a minute or so, and then we started to listen to Gail's conversation with whoever she was talking to at the police department. And it was clear to us that she couldn't persuade anybody to take her seriously because she didn't know anything of her own personal knowledge and didn't know the address of the house. And so I said to Brad, just in case it's true, we ought to go over there. Do you know how to find the house? And he said, yes. So I said, let's, just in case they're shot and bleeding, let's go and see if we can be of some assistance before the police get there. So we ran to his car and drove to Linda and Dan's house.
Were you driving or was Brad driving?
Brad was. I wasn't sure how to get there. Brad said he could get there.
And at this time, did Dan and Linda live at 1041 Cypress in Hillcrest?
I'm not sure the street address, but that's the street.
Okay. So you and Brad got in the car and decided to go over to the house.
Yes.
Describe what happened then.
During the trip over or after we got there?
Well, how did you drive over there?
Brad had a Porsche that was a pretty fast car. I was a little nervous driving over. He went awfully fast, and he didn't make any wrong turns. Got us right there within, I guess, 10 or 12 minutes. It was a pretty amazing ride. During the trip over, he said, "We've got to find the note." And I wasn't sure what he was talking about.
Your Honor, objection, hearsay. Sustained.
Once you said you drove quickly, obviously there was some urgency, and you got to the house. What happened when you got to the house?
When he pulled up in front, we both jumped out of the car and started to run toward the front door. I said, "Turn your emergency flashes on just in case the police have trouble finding it." And then we both got to the front door. I pounded on the front door with my open hand and yelled Dan's name and tried the doorbell, and there was no response. So,
If you could hold on just a second, Your Honor, may I have marked as People's Exhibit 1 a poster board which includes 4 8x10 photographs?
Committee still marked.
Thank you. If, Mr. Forbes, if you could step down here for a second. If you could stand off to the side there so that everyone can see. Can you first for us just identify what the photograph that's marked A shows?
This is Dan and Linda's house from the street, essentially, looking up across the sidewalk and up the walkway toward the front door.
And what is shown in photograph B?
B is a closer view of the front door for the house. It's
And-
right here.
And you indicated that the first thing that you did was to go up to the front door and pound or knock on the front door.
Yes.
Now, obviously, in photograph B, the door is open. It was not open, though, at the time that you were there. Is that correct?
It was closed and locked. I tried the door after pounding on the door.
Okay. You're going to have to make sure and speak up so that... So you rang the door, you knocked on the door. Did you get any response?
No.
What did you do then?
I suggested to Brad that he go around the house to the right while I go around the house to the left, and to see if we could find an open window or an open door or some way to get inside the house.
Did you do that?
Yes, I got about as far as where you can see here on the left, and I think there's a fence or something that made it impossible to go farther, so I ran back around the way he had gone, up the driveway toward the garage.
And is there a photograph that shows the driveway that you're referring to?
The photograph C is a closer view of the driveway, which is right here, going back toward the garage, and that's Dan's car through the driveway. So that's the way I ran back, and I found Brad in the back of the house, which is photograph D.
What happened then when you came around to the back of the house? Can you move back this way just a little bit so I can see?
When I got around the back of the house, Brad was standing,
Here, I'll let you use that.
thanks, he was standing by a back door over in this area. I think it's over. It's not that one. There's another door that faces, I think, that direction. Maybe right here along that edge. He was standing by a door and he got someplace back there. And he said, "It looks like no one's here. Let's leave." And I said, "Just in case something is wrong, let's not. Let's break in." And I was about to put my fist through a window on that door. Thought better of it. I had seen an open window, slightly open window that was screened off. I think it's one of these, might be this one, right here inside the house coming up the driveway. It was screened, but the window was open about 3 inches. So I ran back over there and put my fist through the screen and was trying to undo the screen, but I'm not tall enough. I jumped up to hit it. I'm not tall enough to undo that screen, but Brad was, and Brad flicked it open and pulled it open, and I started to climb up through the window. He put his hand on my rear end and gave me a shove through the window, and I crawled across the top of the washer and dryer inside the house.
Why don't you just circle for us in red on the photograph the window that you think it is that you climbed through?
It was definitely one of these windows. I think it was this one, the taller one. I should circle that?
Yes, go ahead. And for the record, Your Honor, he has circled a window that's on photograph D.
Thank you.
Once you then basically got into the house, is that correct?
Yes.
And you said over a washer and dryer, it was like a laundry room area?
Yes.
What did you do then?
The second I got inside the house, I was yelling Dan's name and Lynn's name as loud as I could, thinking that they might be asleep, or they might be in bed together, or they might be hurt someplace. I was trying to find them. I didn't want them to be disturbed by having an intruder come into the bedroom, so I was yelling to let them know I was in there. And heard no response, and was looking for a bedroom. I looked around quickly to downstairs. There were no bedrooms down there. I saw a dining room, a kitchen, and a study, and a living room. And I moved diagonally toward the front of the house, and I came back inside the house near the front door.
Okay, hold on just a second. May I have marked, Your Honor, as People's Exhibit 2, another poster board that includes 3 8x10 photographs.
And they are so marked.
If you could take a look at those photographs, you indicated coming through a hallway, I think. Do you see that in any of those photographs?
I'm not very well oriented on this. I know this stairway is the one that comes down near the front door, and I came to the stairway from this direction over here. If you look at photograph B, showing the stairway, I came from the right side of that stairway, turned and immediately went up the stairway.
So before we go any further, you're indicating a stairway, and that's in photograph B, correct?
Yes.
And that's the stairway that's right inside the front door.
That's right.
And there's just a same picture of the stairway, but from a different angle in photograph C.
Appears to be, yes.
Okay, and you indicated that you did go up the stairs.
Yeah, I ran up the stairs 2 at a time as fast as I could get up, and got to the top of the stairs, which looks like photograph A is the top of the stairs. And the first direction I turned was left toward the bedroom when the door was open.
Your Honor, may I have marked as People's Exhibit 3, a poster board which includes 2 8x10 photographs.
Maybe so marked.
And directing your attention to photograph A, which is at the top of the stairs, and the doorway at the top of the stairs. Is that the doorway that you're referring to?
That's the doorway to the bedroom where they were.
What did you do then when you got to the top of the stairs?
I think by that time I wasn't yelling their names anymore. I think I just was going as fast as I could to find them. I turned and walked into that room immediately. Saw the view that's shown here before I went in, and after I got inside the bedroom, I saw essentially what's shown in photograph B.
When you first look in the bedroom then from the doorway, is this an accurate picture of what you can see of the bedroom in photograph B?
From the doorway, that's about what it looks like.
So from the doorway, without entering the room, you couldn't see the bodies at first, is that correct?
Not yet.
May I have marked as People's Exhibit 4, Your Honor, another poster board with 2 8x10 photographs.
Maybe so marked.
Did you actually go into the room?
Yes, I did.
And what did you see when you got into the room?
The first thing I saw was Linda, who's on the bed here. And then I saw Dan's foot in the position shown here in photograph A. And they were both greenish in hue. And just as they're shown there.
Did you do anything once you saw them?
I went over to Dan and reached down to his throat from this position here and put my thumb and fingers on his neck, on his carotid arteries right here, to see if I could feel any pulse. There was none. It was cold. And I did the same thing with Linda. And then went back. I was down on my knees again. Next to Dan, when I sensed someone behind me, turned around, it was Brad, who had come in the house too.
Before we go any further, is the photographs that are in people's floor, A and B, is that an accurate picture of what you saw that morning?
Yes.
I take it when you touched the neck of Dan Broderick that you felt no pulse?
That's right.
And did you also check the pulse of Linda?
Yes. But I didn't reach over with my left hand. I just felt it with the back of my right hand. She was cold and green too, so she's obviously dead.
You indicated that you then felt a presence behind you and that it was Brad.
Yes.
What happened then?
I was a little startled, frankly. I turned up and I said, they're both dead. Let's go call someone. And so we turned and started to leave. I think I paused for a second and looked back for a second or two and turned and left and we went downstairs. And by the time we got to the front door and got through it, there were two police officers coming up the walkway.
Other than checking Dan to see if he was alive and Linda, did you touch anything else in the room?
I touched nothing.
Okay. Touch any windows or doors or bedspreads or anything like that?
No.
When you bent over to feel Dan's neck, did you see anything on the floor next to his mouth?
Yeah, there was a puddle or a pool of what looked like regurgitated cookies and cream ice cream, but I think it was probably saliva and blood. So he essentially been aspirating the saliva and blood out of his mouth for some time.
You indicated that you left, you went down the stairs and the police were there at that point.
They were just coming up the walk.
What happened then?
I told them that the people that live in the house are both dead. I'll show you where they are. And they went inside the house and they were walking slowly up the stairs. And for some reason, I felt some urgency to get them faster, so I ran past both of them up to the doorway and showed them where the bodies were. The police went inside and were looking at them and getting, I guess they were kind of felt they were dead enough too. And I stood there looking at that for 5 or 6 seconds. And I said to Brad, I guess we can probably wait outside. And he said, yeah, do that, but don't leave, wait on the sidewalk. I want to talk about the view and stuff. He and I went down and waited outside.
Okay, you can go ahead and take a stand. Did you then wait outside the house for some period of time while the police were there?
Yes, we did. We went to Brad's car, and I used his telephone. He had a portable cellular telephone in his car. I called my wife to tell her that they were dead and to go and get the children and get them in a safe place.
What children were you talking about?
Danny and Rhett Broderick, who were living up the street with Betty. Or they were spending the night there with Betty.
And as far as you know, did Gail go get Danny and Rhett?
Yes. I didn't find that out until I got home, which was a couple hours later. But they were there when I got here.
And who was it that broke the news to Danny and Rhett?
Gail and I did together. When I got to the house, Brad dropped me off at the top of the driveway, and I walked down, and they both knew that he'd been shot.
Your Honor, objection. Overruled.
And they asked me if he was dead. And I said, I'm not sure. I wasn't sure if I should be the one to tell him or someone else should. And I went and found Gail, and I said...
Your Honor, objection. Narrative is irrelevant. Sustained.
To answer your question, Gail and I told him within a few minutes after that.
When you were inside the house, on the stair area, did you happen to notice the telephone anywhere?
Yeah, I noticed the telephone at the top of the stairs as I went up, but I didn't pay a lot of attention to it. There was a telephone there that was obviously not usable, but I didn't think anything about it until Brad and I were leaving. I looked again at the phone to see whether or not it could be plugged in or something, but the wires were torn and frayed, and it was useless as far as I could tell. At that point, he said he had a phone in his car.
Did you touch the phone at all or move the phone from where it was?
No.
I have no further questions.
Cross it out. Mr. Forbes, you indicated that Elisabeth Broderick had a home just some doors down from you?
Yes.
Okay. And she also had a condominium?
That's my understanding.
Okay. Now, the home down the street was for sale, was it not? 1989?
I'm not sure if it was or not. I guess it was.
Okay. So you don't, when you say you're not sure, is that you don't remember, or you just never knew whether it was for sale?
Now that you mention it, it sounds correct that it was for sale.
And you knew she had just purchased a condo, didn't you?
I'm not sure when she purchased it. It was a recent acquisition of hers, I know.
Okay. But as far as you knew, did you know whether she was moving from her house to the condo at that time?
Objection, Your Honor, beyond the scope. Objection.
On what basis, Your Honor?
Beyond scope as to whether she was moving.
In had you seen her, you didn't see Elisabeth Broderick on the 5th of November, did you?
No,
Did you see her on the 4th?
I don't believe I did.
Now, you indicated that you were a friend of both Dan and Elisabeth Broderick,
I considered myself to be.
and if I'm going to show you what, and not, Your Honor, I'd ask this to be marked as Defendant's A. Appears to be a picture of the defendant and witness.
8x10 color photo,
Yeah.
marked defendant's A.
Do you recognize that photo?
I've never seen it before, as far as I know, but I recognize the scene.
Okay. And that was a summer camp called the Hair of the Bear?
Actually, the Lair of the Bear.
Lair of the Bear, that you were with Elisabeth Broderick's family?
Yes.
Okay. That was a time that you were not with Dan or with Dan?
Your Honor, I'm going to object as beyond the scope, but counsel indicated he was just going to have an identified photograph.
Overruled, he said he was there.
I don't know what you mean by with Dan or
Do you remember if he was there? Do you remember ever going with him there?
the Lair of the Bear?
Yeah.
I don't recall him ever being there.
Okay. Now, you said that you were a friend of Dan Broderick's. Were you a close friend of Dan Broderick?
I think so.
Okay. And were you closer to him than Elisabeth Broderick?
After they separated, I guess I saw a lot more of Elisabeth than I did of Dan, because she was a neighbor and was at our house every week. We were at her house regularly, too.
And during the time that Elisabeth Broderick was living down the street from you, were your kids visiting, children visiting at her house?
Your Honor, again, objection at this point beyond the scope.
Sustained.
Now, when Brad Wright came over and gave you the information, you listened to your wife call on the phone to the police, is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. Did you give your wife Dan Broderick's phone number?
I didn't have his phone number.
And did you give your wife Dan Broderick's address?
I didn't know his address.
Okay. Did you give your wife directions to get to Dan's house?
She knew how to get there. I wasn't sure how to get there. I'd been there twice before. I could have found it, but it would have taken me probably a few wrong turns to find it.
Now, the time that when you went to Mr. Broderick's house, you indicated that Brad Wright was in the car with you?
He drove the car. Yes.
At any time when you first found the house, did you then call the police again and indicate what the address was before you went into the house?
No.
Okay. Now, when you arrived at the house, you knew where you then became aware of what the address was, did you not?
Yes.
Okay. And where did you park when you came to the house?
Directly across the street.
Okay. Was there a reason you didn't pull into the driveway?
I'm not sure that the driveway was capable of being pulled into. There's a gate there. The gate might have been closed. I don't remember that.
Okay. But for some reason, you parked out on the street instead of parking in front of the house, is that correct?
Brad parked the car. I was in the car.
Okay. Now, you then went to the front of the house and you indicated you banged on the door, is that correct?
Yes.
Were you aware of where their bedroom was?
No.
Okay. So did you ever ask Brad where their bedroom was?
No.
Did you shout to them at all?
Did I shout?
Outside the house, did you shout in the windows?
I shouted at the door. I didn't direct my voice at any particular window.
Now, during the time that, did you ever notice whether there were dogs in the house? Or
Never.
dogs on the property?
I never saw a dog.
Okay. Did you ever hear a dog?
No.
When you went around to the back of the house, you indicated you went one way and Mr. Wright went the other way.
I started to go to the left. I couldn't make it around to the back on the left, so I went back around the right driveway the way he had gone.
Now, when you, the window that you found that was open, was it on the left or on the right as you're facing the house?
As you're facing the house, it's on the right, on the driveway side.
Okay, so it was on the opposite end of the house, is that correct, from where you first started?
No, it was on the side. It was on the first side that you come to as you walk around the right side of the house.
Okay. So the side that Brad first went around, you went around the left, he went around the right. Is that correct?
I didn't make it very far on the left, but we both went up the driveway side on the right, yes.
Did you both go together?
No.
Okay. And it was on your way to the backyard that you noticed that there was an open window?
Yes.
And when you went to the back, did you go through a gate at all?
No. Well, let me say, when you say a gate, there's some structures around there. I'm not sure what you mean by a gate.
Okay. Was there, to get to the back door, was it gated at all, the yard around it?
No. I don't think
And it was
gated.
open? I mean, you didn't have to open a gate to get from the side to the back door at all?
Not that I can remember.
Okay. And when you went to the back door, again, you found that to be locked
Yes,
and no windows open?
correct.
At any time after you entered the house, did you come to, was their bedroom situated near the back door?
Now, their bedroom is upstairs. You have to go toward the front of the house, then back toward the middle and back of the house to get to the bedroom. So I'm not sure if it's closer to the front or the back. I just don't know that.
So you never became oriented towards whether their bedroom was in the front or the back of the house?
I didn't pay much attention to that, no.
And then you went upstairs, is that correct?
I did, yes.
Okay. And as soon as you saw the people, you realized that it appeared that they were dead?
That was my first impression.
Okay. Now, you didn't move anything at all, the bodies at all, I take it?
That's true.
And you indicated that you then went with Brad down to call the police. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, at the time that you went down, do you remember talking to a police officer? Downstairs?
As I testified a minute ago, it was outside.
Okay. And do you remember it being a female police officer?
There was one female and one male.
Do you remember telling the officers that they should hurry up and get an ambulance?
No.
Okay. Did you ever tell them that, or you didn't tell them that? Do you remember whether you did or did not?
I remember telling them they're both dead. I'll show you where they are. I don't remember ever discussing an ambulance.
Okay. And so it's your memory that definitely, it's your opinion, so it's your memory now, definitely you did not tell them anything about an ambulance.
That's correct.
And were you upset at that time?
Yes.
You indicated that you noticed the telephone that was on the top of the stairway. When did you notice, when you went into the bedroom or when you came out?
I noticed it before going into the bedroom. As I was coming up the stairs, I saw it at the top of the stairs on the landing. I just glanced at it and it kept on going. Didn't register that it was anything but a telephone that wasn't usable.
Now, I take it the reason you didn't know when you got to the top of the stairs which one the bedroom was, is that correct?
Which one of the two doors
Yes.
was their bedroom? No, I didn't know.
Okay. Was both doors open, or do you remember?
I don't remember.
Okay. But you just remember going into an open door.
I remember the one on the left was open, and that's the way I went first.
Now, you indicated that the telephone wires were frayed. Did you pick up the telephone to see that?
I didn't touch it, no.
Okay. And how did you notice that the telephone wires were frayed?
Just looking at them as I came back out of the bedroom, I could see that that phone was not going to be very useful to us. It was not usable.
Were you able to, how was the cord? Was there a long cord around the telephone, a short cord?
I don't have a distinct recollection of how long it was.
Was the cord wrapped around the
Objection, Your Honor, I think he just indicated he doesn't have a distinct recollection.
I'm just gonna ask that overall. If you remember.
I don't remember if it was wrapped around it or not. I don't recall that it was.
Okay, showing you what you've been showed once, People's Exhibit. Two. Do you see a telephone in A on 2?
Yes, I do.
And is that your memory of how the phone looked, or are you just not sure?
That's generally the way I remember it, but I can't say if that's exactly the way it was or not. It looks the way I remember it.
You remember what time that you left your house in the morning?
In Brad's car,
Yes.
my best guess would have been that it was 7:20 or 7:30, someplace in there.
And you have no memory at all of making any phone calls between the time you left in Brad's car until you arrived, up to the time that you arrived at Mr. Broderick's home?
Me personally?
Yeah. Do you remember either one of you making a call?
No, neither one of us used a telephone from the time he walked in my door until we got to Dan and Linda's house.
After the homicide in this case, did you get involved with a group of people about involved with a group of people that wanted to assure the conviction of Elisabeth Broderick?
Objection, Your Honor. It's beyond scope.
Sustained.
Might be heard, Your Honor. Goes to motive and bias.
No, go ahead. Call him as your own witness if you want.
Are you Irish, Mr. Forbes?
Objection, irrelevant.
Sustained.
Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time.
Redirect.
Just briefly, Your Honor. Mr. Forbes, did you indicate that Brad Wright had a phone in his car, one of those cellular phones?
It was in his glove compartment, yes.
Okay. But your recollection was that on the way over, you didn't make any phone calls?
That's right.
At that point on the way over to the house, I take it you didn't know for sure whether they had been shot or killed or what the circumstances were?
That's true.
And I take it that after you did find Dan and Linda, you were fairly upset, perhaps even in shock. Is that fair to say?
I don't think I was in shock. I was upset.
And you don't have a clear recollection of exactly what you might have said to the police officers when they arrived at the
Your Honor,
scene?
I object. It's leading and it's...
Sustained.
Do you have a clear and exact recollection of what you said to the police officers? Might you have said, call an ambulance, get help?
That's possible, but I doubt it. I just don't think I would say that.
And it was the cellular phone from Brad's car that you used afterwards to call your wife, Gail?
I think cellular phone is the right term. This is not the kind that is in a car. It's the kind you can put in your pocket. And it had batteries, and the batteries weren't very good, so it was cutting out. But that's the phone I used to call Gail.
It wasn't a phone inside the house?
That's right.
Thank you, nothing.
Recross.
Yes. Mr. Forbes, do you recall when you were questioned on cross by myself, indicating that you were sure you didn't ask for an ambulance?
Right, I don't believe you testified to that. I object.
Sustained. It's argumentative.
What is your memory at this time? Is your memory that you know that you did not tell them you wanted an ambulance? Is your memory that that's possible?
It is possible that I said something about an ambulance, but my recollection of what I said is, as I testified before, I recall saying, they're dead, I'll show you where they are.
I have no further questions.
Anything further?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Forbes.
Thank you.